My name is Amanda. This is a statement about what happened to me over 5 days in November. It's about a trucker named Ray and the 2,000 miles I spent trapped in his cabin. I'm telling you this well, because I lived it, every single second of it, and because maybe if someone hears it, they'll think twice before making the same stupid decision I did. It started on a Tuesday. I'm sure of that. It was cold, the kind of damp cold that gets into your bones. My car had died. Total engine failure on I-80 in Nebraska, about 40 miles from the nearest town that was more than just a gas station and a diner. I'd been there for 3 hours. My phone was at 15%, and I'd gotten one tow truck quote that was more than I had in my bank account. I was crying. I'm not ashamed to admit it. I was just sitting in my dead Civic, crying from pure frustration and fear. That's when he pulled up. Not in a tow truck, in a big, long-nosed Peterbilt 379. It was this deep forest green. Looked old, but cared for. He didn't pull in behind me. He pulled in front, then walked back. He was normal looking. That's the worst part. Maybe mid-40s, wearing a faded flannel shirt under a Carhartt jacket, jeans, work boots. He had a cap on, but he took it off when he got to my window. He had kind eyes. I remember that specifically. Tired, but kind. He tapped on the glass. I rolled it down, trying to wipe my face quickly. "Trouble?" he asked. His voice was calm, low. I just nodded. Couldn't even get words out. He asked if I'd called for help, and I told him about the quote. He made a face like that was a real shame. He said his name was Ray. He was headed east, all the way to Pennsylvania, said he had an empty cabin, and if I didn't mind the company and the ride, he could drop me at a decent-sized town with a proper mechanic and a bus station a few 100 miles down the road. "No funny business," he said, holding up his hands. "Just hate to see someone stranded. My daughter's about your age." That did it. The daughter thing. It felt like a guarantee, a safety certificate. I was so tired, so scared, so cold. My thinking it wasn't thinking, it was just grabbing a lifeline. I grabbed my backpack from the passenger seat, just my laptop, a change of clothes, my charger, and I locked my car. I told myself I'd figure it out later. I got up into the passenger side of that Peterbilt. It was warm, it smelled like coffee and old leather. He had a little bobblehead dog on the dash. It felt safe. The first hour was fine, normal. He asked about where I was from, what I did. I gave vague answers. He talked about the routes, pointed out things on the road. He offered me coffee from his thermos. I said no, thank you. I had my own water bottle. I remember feeling my shoulders start to relax. I'd gotten lucky, a good Samaritan. We stopped for fuel about 2 hours in. It was a big, bright truck stop. He said he'd be about 20 minutes. He had to fuel and do his logbook. "Stretch your legs if you want," he said, and hopped out. I went to open my door. It didn't open. I pushed the handle. Nothing. I looked at it. There was no interior door handle, just a smooth panel where it should have been. I must have looked confused because I started feeling along the edge of the door, looking for a latch, a button, anything. That's when I saw him, outside, at the fuel pump. He was looking right at me, and he wasn't smiling anymore. It was a flat, empty look. He reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out what looked like a small black remote, and pointed it at the truck. I heard a solid clunk from all the doors. He'd locked them, remotely, from the outside. My heart didn't sink, it just stopped. For a second, everything was silent. I started pressing the window button. Nothing. The window switches were dead. I looked over at the driver's side. His door had a handle, of course. Mine was just gone. Modified. I started hitting the window with the heel of my hand. It was thick, reinforced. It didn't even make a sound. He watched me for another moment, then turned back to the fuel pump, like he was watching the numbers tick up. That was the first moment of real panic. I fumbled for my phone. No service. One bar that came and went. I tried to text a friend, a 911 text. It just spun. I looked around the cabin wildly. That's when I started noticing other things. Little things I'd missed. The divider curtain behind the seats was a heavy, dark material, not the flimsy kind. It was fastened with heavy-duty snaps. There were no sharp objects anywhere. Everything was soft or rounded. My breathing got fast. I was starting to hyperventilate. He came back. He unlocked the doors with that remote, climbed in. The smell of diesel fuel came in with him. He didn't look at me, just started the engine. As he pulled out of the stop, he reached over and, with one hand, pulled the curtain closed behind us, snapping it shut. We were in a little box now. Just the 2 seats, the dash, and this dark curtain cutting off the back. I found my voice. It was a whisper. "My door, it doesn't open." He glanced at me. "Safety feature," he said, his voice still calm. "Had some issues with the latch. Didn't want it flying open on the highway." He said it like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "I want out," I said louder. "At the next town. Let me out." "We'll get you sorted," he said, not agreeing, not disagreeing, just a phrase, a non-answer. We drove in silence for another hour. I was paralyzed, watching the mile markers go by, trying to memorize exit numbers, anything. He pulled off again, this time at a rest area. Not a big truck stop, just a quiet wooded rest area with a few vending machines and bathrooms in a small building. It was getting dark. "Bathroom break," he said, and used the remote. Clunk. My door was locked again. He got out, came around to my side. He unlocked it and opened it from the outside. "Make it quick," he said. This was my chance. I could run. The building was maybe 50 yards away. There were a couple of cars in the lot. I slid out of the seat, my legs shaky. I took 1 step, then 2 toward the building. I didn't run. I should have run. But I was scared running would trigger something. I just walked fast. I didn't make it to the building. A hand clamped on my upper arm from behind. It wasn't rough, but it was solid as iron. He'd moved silently. He leaned in close to my ear. His breath smelled of coffee and mint. "Not that way," he said softly. His other hand came around, and in it was a small knife. Not a big hunting knife, a little utility knife, the kind with a retractable blade. He pressed the tip lightly against my side, right under my ribs. I could feel it through my jacket and sweater. "The truck's this way." He walked me back, the knife a constant, tiny pressure. He opened the passenger door. "Get in. Climb into the back." He nodded toward the curtain. I froze. "No, please." The pressure from the knife increased just a bit. Not enough to cut, just enough to promise it could. "Now, Amanda." He used my name. It was so casual. I climbed up, fumbling with the curtain snaps. He undid them from his side. Behind the curtain was the sleeper berth. A mattress, some shelves, a little storage space. It was messy with blankets and clothes. He climbed in after me, pulling the curtain shut and snapping it closed from the inside this time. He put the knife down on a shelf, within his reach, not mine. What happened next? I'm not going to detail it. You know what happened. He raped me. There in the sleeper berth, parked at a quiet rest area while families used the bathrooms a stone's throw away. He was methodical, quiet. He didn't hit me. He didn't need to. The knife was right there. His size was enough. When he was done, he got up, pulled his jeans on. He looked at me, curled on the mattress. "Get dressed," he said. "We roll in 5. That was the pattern. 4 or 5 days. We would drive for hours. My door was always locked from the outside when we stopped. He controlled everything. When I ate, when I drank. He gave me a bottle to use as a toilet. He'd stop at remote places or late at night, and at every stop, after he refueled or checked his rig, he'd come back, open my door, and with that knife or just the threat in his eyes, he'd make me go into the back. It became a routine, a horrifying, degrading routine. I stopped fighting. Fighting made it worse. It took longer. I just went blank. I detached. I lived somewhere behind my own eyes, watching the road go by. On the 3rd night, he was asleep in the driver's seat, reclined. We were at a truck stop, a big one. He'd chained the steering wheel with a heavy chain and padlocked to the brake pedal. A common theft deterrent, I guess. He was snoring softly. I was in the back, but the curtain was open. I couldn't sleep. I was looking around the sleeper cab, not really seeing anything. My eyes landed on a small rectangular access panel in the wall, near the floor. It was about the size of a hardcover book. It had a tiny, almost invisible seam. I'd seen it before, but thought it was just part of the truck's interior. I don't know why I looked at it then. Maybe because the light from a sodium vapor lamp outside was hitting it at a certain angle. I saw a faint smudge, a fingerprint on the edge. I glanced at Ray, still asleep. Slowly, I reached out. My fingertips found the edge. There was no latch, but when I pressed one corner and then the other, the panel popped inward slightly. It was held by magnets, a secret compartment. My heart started pounding in a different way. This wasn't fear of him waking up. This was dread, a cold, sinking dread. I pulled the panel open. Inside wasn't deep, just a few inches, but it was full. On one side, there was a small stack of Polaroid photos, the old-fashioned kind. I picked them up with trembling hands. There were 7 of them. Each one was a photo of a woman. Some were smiling, posed like they'd been taken before she knew. Some were just shots of them sleeping in this very bunk or looking out the passenger window. The last 2 were different. They were pictures of roadside markers, a cross with flowers, a ribbon tied to a post. I recognized one of the women from a news segment I'd seen months ago about a missing hitchhiker in Wyoming. I dropped the photos like they were on fire. They fluttered to the mattress. Next to where they'd been was a small bundle of tools. They weren't truck tools. There were rolls of heavy-duty duct tape, zip ties, the thick plastic kind, a ball gag, a stun gun, and a small, clean-looking bone saw, the kind you might use for camping or other things. I couldn't breathe. I just stared. This wasn't just about me. This was a system, a hunting ground, those women in the photos, the roadside markers. I was looking at trophies, and the tools were for when he was done, for when the routine stops were over. I had to get out. Not just at a stop, I had to get out now. The next time he slept, but he chained the wheel. Even if I could get to the driver's seat, I couldn't drive the truck. I needed to be outside the truck. My chance came the next day, late afternoon. He pulled into a busy gas station that also had a small diner attached. There were lots of people. He had to use the bathroom in the diner, he said. He looked at me, calculating. He couldn't take me with him into a public restroom. He couldn't leave me in a locked cab at a busy place where I might start banging and draw attention. He made a decision. He took a roll of that duct tape from his secret compartment. "Hands," he said. I held them out. He wrapped my wrists together in front of me, not brutally tight, but secure. Then he pulled my hoodie up over my head so the cuffs of the tape were somewhat hidden in the sleeve. "You come with me. You use the women's room. You come right back out. You say one word. Make one look." He didn't finish. He just patted his pocket where the knife was. He unlocked my door, helped me down. We walked into the diner. The smell of greasy food was overwhelming. People were chatting, eating. It felt like another planet. He nodded toward the restroom hallway. 2 minutes, he whispered. I walked. My legs were jelly. The women's room was empty. I got into a stall, locked it. My taped hands fumbled with the lock. I had to get the tape off. I looked around desperately. There was nothing. No sharp edges on the stall door. The toilet paper dispenser was smooth. I was crying, silently, frustration and terror bubbling over. Then I saw it. The metal cover for the sanitary napkin disposal unit on the wall. It had a slightly raised, sharp-ish edge near the opening slot. I pressed the duct tape against it and started sawing my wrists back and forth. It was slow. The tape was strong. I could hear people coming in and out of the bathroom. A woman washed her hands, hummed a tune, left. I kept sawing. Finally, it ripped. My wrists were raw and sticky with adhesive residue, but they were free. I threw the tape in the toilet, flushed it. I burst out of the stall. I didn't wash my hands. I just ran out of the bathroom, past the sinks, and out into the diner. I didn't look for Ray. I ran for the front door. I pushed it open, the bell jingling. The cold air hit me. I saw the truck, parked at the diesel pumps. I ran the other way, toward the road. I was sobbing. just running blindly, waving my arms at the traffic on the highway frontage road. A car slowed down, an older couple in a sedan. The passenger window rolled down. The woman looked concerned. "Honey, are you okay?" "Please," I gasped. "Please, call the police. That man in the truck, he's—" Strong arms wrapped around my waist from behind and lifted me off my feet. Ray. He'd come out of the diner. He was smiling at the couple, an embarrassed, weary smile. "I'm so sorry," he said, his voice dripping with false concern. "My niece. She's off her meds, has episodes. Ran out of the bathroom before I could stop her." I screamed. I kicked. "He's lying. Help me." The couple looked horrified, confused. The man started to open his door. Ray was already walking backward quickly toward the truck, carrying me like a sack of potatoes. He got to the passenger door, which he'd left open. He threw me in, not into the seat, onto the floor in the footwell. He slammed the door, locked it remotely, and ran around to the driver's side. I scrambled up, pounding on the window. I saw the old man from the sedan standing by his car, holding a phone to his ear. He was calling someone. But Ray was already in, starting the engine. He pulled out of that gas station so fast the tires squealed. We were back on the highway in seconds. He didn't say a word for a long time. He just drove. His knuckles were white on the wheel. The calm facade was gone. He was furious. I curled up in the passenger seat, shaking violently. I'd had my chance. I'd blown it. And I'd seen his eyes. That was it. The routine was over. The next stop wouldn't be for fuel. He drove for hours into the night. The landscape got darker, more remote. I knew what was coming. I saw him glance at the secret compartment panel. He was just waiting for the right place, a place where no one would hear, where no car would pass. I made a decision then. It wasn't a brave decision. It was the only decision left. I would not go to his special place. I would not be in those woods with him and his bone saw. If I was going to die, it would be on my terms, or maybe, just maybe, there was a sliver of a chance. I waited. I watched the speedometer. It was steady, around 60 miles per hour. The road was a 2-lane highway now, but it was paved. There were guardrails in places. We were coming up to a long, sweeping curve. I could see the headlights of an oncoming truck in the distance. "I need to use the bottle," I said, my voice flat. He glanced at me, suspicious. He shook his head. "I really need to," I said, putting a hand on my stomach. "Or it's going to be a mess on your floor." He cursed under his breath. He hated messes in his truck. That was one thing I'd learned. He slowed down just a fraction, but not much. "Make it fast." I reached down for the plastic bottle he'd given me. I fumbled with it, pretending to have trouble. I positioned myself sideways in the seat, my back toward him, like I was trying for some privacy. I was actually positioning my feet against the door. My right hand found the door's manual lock. It was a little toggle. It was still unlocked from when he'd thrown me in. He controlled the power locks, but he couldn't stop me from opening the door if it was manually unlocked. The oncoming truck's lights grew brighter. This was it. I took the deepest breath of my life. I grabbed the door handle, the one that only worked from the outside, but I pulled it toward me anyway, creating a gap. With all the strength I had left, I kicked the door open with both feet. The rush of wind was monstrous, a roaring vacuum. Ray shouted something, lunged for me. His fingers brushed my jacket, but I was already rolling, falling out into the roaring dark. The world became a violent, tumbling blur. The ground hit me, not all at once, but in a series of brutal, crashing impacts. I felt something in my arm snap with a sound I heard inside my head. I rolled and skidded across the asphalt, the gravel on the shoulder tearing through my clothes and skin. I think I screamed, but the sound was lost in the wind and the Doppler scream of the Peterbilt's brakes. Then, blackness. I woke up to flashing lights, red and blue painting the trees. A paramedic was leaning over me. A state trooper was talking into his radio. I was on a backboard being lifted into an ambulance. I tried to speak, to tell them about the green truck, about Ray. All that came out was a croak. I spent 3 weeks in the hospital. A compound fracture in my right arm, 4 broken ribs, a collapsed lung, road rash over half my body, a concussion. The police came. I told them everything about the truck, The compartment, the photos, the tools. They found my car in Nebraska, corroborated my start point. They put out a bolo for a forest green Peterbilt 379, driver named Ray. They never found him. Or the truck. Not while I was in the hospital. The old couple from the diner came forward. Their description matched mine. The gas station had security footage, but it was too grainy, the plates muddied. A state trooper told me, weeks later, they found an abandoned rig matching the description in a remote wooded area in West Virginia. It had been cleaned, professionally. No fingerprints, no photos, no tools. The VIN plate had been removed. It was a ghost. He was a ghost. My body healed. Mostly. The scars are there. The limp comes back when I'm tired. The arm aches when it rains. But that's not what keeps me up at night. What keeps me up is the sound of that door lock clicking shut, the smell of coffee and mint, the sight of those Polaroids fluttering down, and the knowledge that somewhere, on some highway, that forest green Peterbilt is still running, and the passenger door doesn't open from the inside. So that's my statement. That's what happened. I'm Amanda. And I jumped from a truck going 60 miles an hour to get away from the man driving it. And some days, I still don't feel like I got away far enough.